What is up, Badger fans? I have a special guest here. Rajeev is out of town, so Nick Osen here to check things out with me. And we're going to talk a little Badger basketball and dive into who are the 5 biggest players that Wisconsin needs to get this cycle in order to have what we think will be a great class. We'll talk about that next.
Welcome to the Bucky Report, your destination for all things Wisconsin Badgers. Authentic takes.
Oh my God.
Game analysis.
Touchdown Badgers! Ring one up!
And discussion from the fan perspective.
Woo-hoo!
Thanks for joining us and on Wisconsin.
So how's it going, Nick? First time on the show here.
Man, I'm doing great. I've been looking forward to coming on with you, man. You know, I'm blessed to have you read my work, and you've definitely shown really how much you know about the game and about recruiting. So anytime I can kind of bond with some fans and obviously talk some great Badger stuff, man, it's a good night.
All right, man. For those of you who don't know who Nick is a staff writer with 247. He covers the Badger beat with Evan Flood. And him and I have been going back and forth a little behind the scenes talking about some of the Badger recruits and what's been going on with the Badger basketball team here. So tonight we're going to dive into that a little bit. We'll start out with the Purdue game and just your thoughts. You were there covering the game. So what do you think about this one? I'm anxious to see what your thoughts were on it.
Yeah, definitely, my friend. So I actually have a lot of thoughts, and a lot of them are like really positive. I think, first of all, you know, of course, you look at kind of the spread and to be able to cover that as like, okay, were they competitive? But I really think they were. I mean, I'm sure for you and a lot of, you know, our fans that are listening, the Badgers had a legitimate shot to win this thing twice in the second half. You know, when you have wide open opportunities to kind of get that margin literally to 1 point and multiple occasions with some open threes, I think you're doing a really good thing, not only playing one of the best teams in the nation, but I just saw the stat today, one of the 4 or 5 toughest places in the country. And I'm sure as we kind of progress through this game a little bit, you know, I'll get into more specifics, but I just felt like overall really well executed, really good game plan, game play. And frankly, you hit 1 or 2 of those and the team starts, we'll say 4 out of 12, right? Instead of like 2 for 13, 2 for 12. I could see this game going another way because I think that Guard and the staff actually get a lot of credit, you know, for the game plan on this. I think even though Edey got his numbers, as he always does, I felt like the game plan there was nice. It was perfect on offense. And again, when those looks are created from the top of the key and you're just missing them, I think the plan was something very smart.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think, you know, it's a tough game. This is one of those games for me where I get super frustrated with this team this year. And I'm sure a lot of other people do too, because you could really see the effort level showing on the court with them and how hard they were playing. It's like, man, if you guys played like this every game, we would be like 25-8 or something like that right now. It's so frustrating to see that. Like, we know that this level is in this team's grasp. It's just, you have to want it this bad and be motivated to do it on a game-to-game basis. It's getting to the point now, though, where you know, every game's do or die. We're getting close. So Big Ten tourney, maybe if you bow out early on that, I think we're still probably in. But at that point, you don't really want to have a bad showing in that tournament. You'd like to at least play tough because those bad habits can follow you into March. So you don't want to be in the tourney with that.
Yeah, I completely agree, Justin. You know, I felt like playing hard. I felt like shot selection, like I know we talked about a little bit before the show, was really phenomenal. I think that, you know, a couple guys maybe had a rough stretch, but then like later, the shot selection from just about everyone was terrific. I loved, of course, John Blackwell's performance. I loved how AJ Storr was putting pressure on the defense, I think early and then certainly later when they kind of made that final charge. Tyler Wall, I mean, just the way that he has grown within his game, even if he's still not adding, you know, a mid-range or long-range shooting ability, just his consistency. He has probably been, you know, maybe the most consistent player this year, scoring against Edey, like I mentioned. forcing mismatches, kind of being that point forward type guy in different spots, I felt was really good. And I think the number one thing you take away from this game, and you hit on it a little bit with that effort, I wrote about it too for our site. This team doesn't flinch. When you're down, I believe it got, all the way up to 12, 13 against a team like Purdue. In that environment, I can tell you, man, that's the loudest place I have experienced in the Big Ten Conference. Yeah. And you fight back with a chance to tie or at least or potentially take a lead. That shows me something. And now, like you mentioned, this has to translate. You can't just say, oh, okay, we did our thing. We played well, potentially well enough to win, just didn't beat the number one seed. It has to continue because like you mentioned, and I know as we've talked about off the show a little bit, and certainly a lot of our readers and fans, this team showed that they were like capable of a Final Four or Elite Eight back in January. And obviously February was super tough. And you got to just try to kind of find that middle ground. Did I ever think they were going to make a Final Four? Maybe not. But I personally still think they're very, very capable enough to make that second weekend, man.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, this team, it 100% comes down to how badly they want it. It's one of those things, and especially on the defensive end. And because I've said that this team, everything it wants is within reach if they are willing to do the dirty work. And that's exactly what it is. Like when we were killing everybody early on in the season, it was because the defense was really good. They were playing really gritty, and they were rebounding really well. And that faded in February. The rebounding kind of went downhill. The defense really tailed off. And that's when you can be excellent on defense or on offense, and all it takes is a cold stretch. In every game, you'll have one. And if the other team hangs around enough, that can be enough for them to make a run. And once you start playing from behind, teams tighten up, especially if you've been playing well offensively and you still somehow find yourself behind.
Without a doubt. Yeah, no question about it. And I think it's something that, I think fans really aren't used to because the defense has kind of been that backbone for so many years. Right. The calling cards, certainly when I was growing up and when I was a student there, you had the anomaly a little bit of the Final Four team, specifically that second one. But I mean, that is a top 5 efficient offense ever of all time, any school,
I think that's number one, isn't it?
Yeah, I believe it was, number one. Certainly
in the Ken Palm era, it's the number one adjusted offense.
And so that was a little different. And you still had, multiple players like a Nigel Hayes or Josh Gosser that could lock things down when you needed. And I don't think we have seen that consistently really at all. However, not only being optimistic, but I think it's a real thing. I mean, certainly the staff and players are saying this too. I think that Kamari McGee's return, does it completely, change the scope of what this team can do? I think that'd be a little bit of hyperbole, but does it raise that floor and show what they can do defensively with him active and in the rotation? I definitely think that's fair. I mean, we saw it against an offensively challenged Rutgers team, and then we saw it against Purdue. And it's something I can tell you from being out there, speaking with the players after, Greg Gard, of course, not a player, but he was encouraged by that. John Blackwell certainly was. Like, you could feel kind of, okay, we're disappointed in this loss, but we're maybe seeing something here. We've maybe got something that can translate to the postseason. And as we kind of get a little bit further from that Purdue game, there are some great opportunities that lie ahead just this week before really that NCAA tournament, Justin.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, one of the things I'll take away from McGee, and I try not to put too much on him because there are people that after that first game against Rutgers really want to lean into it and be like, oh, this is a completely different team. And I'm like, he makes a difference. He definitely helps defensively, but I'm like, you can't take the highest scoring game he's had from the season and turn that into that's who he is. I'm like, what you can look at is you can say, does he help defensively? Absolutely. They are, and that's an area they're really struggling. The guards are not defending well right now. Chucky has been really opportunistic, but even he has struggled with pick and roll defense. So having somebody out there who's got a little more quickness and maybe can help a little bit on that is a big deal. I honestly think it might be in their best interest to start coming under screens and just taking what happens in that regard, because we're just getting beat by teams. And even against Purdue, early in the first half, I started calling it out. I'm like, they are abusing us on the pick and roll, and this could be this game if this is what happens, because that can be every team for the remainder of the season is going to make us work on that and prove that we can stop it. And getting in the paint is a problem.
Yeah, no, it's really hard to disagree with any of that. I think either, going under or like obviously just being more physical in terms of just guarding the pick and roll as a whole. I mean, it has to happen because, obviously you're not in these players' heads, but like I've been at just about every media session there's been throughout the year, and I know that these guys know what is possible, and I don't think that they are necessarily a national championship caliber team, but this is a year, and I think it has been kind of a pattern the last couple of years where there's not that one team in the country that is above everybody else, whether that's NIL, portal changing things, the game getting older, which I think is kind of a fun thing about it. But I still think they're very, very capable of making some noise. That's kind of the terminology I've used. And I'm curious, for you, Justin, as we kind of get a little bit closer, just did you at least see enough in that game where you feel comfortable with Wisconsin winning Thursday against Maryland or Rutgers?
I think the first 5 minutes of the game will tell me.
Okay.
And if I see the energy level up that we saw in this game, then I think they win, and I think they'll win by double digits. But if I see them come out and turning the ball over and kind of getting lackadaisical on defense a little bit early and letting sloppy and letting the other team get confident, like that's the biggest thing you can do in basketball is just take it out of the other team right away and play hard on defense, make it tough for them, and build a lead. Because if you take that confidence away from them right from the get-go, sometimes that carries over the entire game. Even if you're not perfect, you still get away with it because you rattled them a little bit. And it's happened to Wisconsin, to be quite honest. In the games we've lost, teams really put pressure on them on their offense, and they struggle with that, quite frankly. If they play a team that's really physical and aggressive on defense, we get rattled. We don't like teams getting into us when they're guarding us. And if that's one of the things, Wisconsin, if they can do that, I think we have enough offensively to still cause problems. Now, I think we've the balloon has popped a little bit on what we were offensively to start the season, but they're more than capable of putting together a good effort against anybody. I think we may have seen kind of what their ceiling is going forward. I think is when you get to teams like Purdue and them, they're just not talented enough to be able to play with them if they're going to play at a high level. But that anybody outside of the probably top 7 or 8 teams in the country, they can probably hang with and play with.
I'm completely with you. And I was smiling at the beginning of your response because that's exactly where my mind was going. When I asked you that question, my mind went to the Rutgers game out east at the rack. Rutgers did exactly that. They pressured Wisconsin. They forced turnovers. And you know what? We were 8, 9, 10 minutes into the game, and it felt like, okay, this is a Scarlet Knights win already. So I think Wisconsin, there's no question they have the potential. They'll be favored over either of those teams. I've been going back and forth. I think for Wisconsin, I'd prefer actually to see Maryland. Not because I think that they are, a worse team than Rutgers or anything, but I don't like when you got to play a team so close together. You just played Rutgers. You obviously struggled a ton early on. And frankly, Maryland can certainly defend, but I'm not quite as worried about kind of some of their offensive options than I maybe was earlier this year. So I think that, that's a for sure win for Wisconsin. If they cannot beat one of those teams, then my expectations, even just, as a media member, are like, okay, honestly, it's
then you start, I don't know how you feel about seeding. I tend to feel like we're inflated right now in a lot of these projections. I look at our record and I'm like, it's really hard for me to get past if we end up being 19-14 headed into the tournament. Like if we lose that game and we're headed in, how do you put us higher than like a 7 seed?
Yeah.
Because it's kind of like, okay, we won some nice games, but we also have 14 losses. It's not like we're perfect this season, and we really did not finish strongly. So I would not be surprised if we got punished for that for some of the teams that are playing a little bit better, but maybe don't have the quality of wins.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that, I'm even going to say, man, if they drop that game so they don't win against Purdue and then they don't win their first game of the Big Ten tournament when they're favored, I could honestly see an 8.
Yeah,
I really could. And you know how much of an optimist I am. But like right now, they're kind of on the edge between that 6 and 7. And
you don't want to be playing an 8-9 game in the weekend, because then you're playing somebody who's a Power 5 team most likely, and they maybe just underperformed. And more often than not, we're playing a team that's probably athletically superior. It will probably be somebody SEC or ACC that's probably a really athletic team that probably underperformed and it's been spotty on the season, because that seems to always be the 8 and 9 games. There's a couple of teams.
The SEC is
underwhelmed
so deep this year too. You don't want to match up with an SEC team, especially that early. But fortunately, Justin and friends, I don't think that's going to happen. I see Wisconsin.
I think we'll get at least one win.
Yep.
That will probably push us to the 7 line.
Yep. And then you've got Northwestern, likely, right? If they win, you know that it's going to be Northwestern there that finished in that top 4. And that's a really interesting one to me. I felt like, I was one of the few people back in October that had Northwestern making the tournament in our kind of 247 sports projections. Yep. I was higher on them and Nebraska.
I agree with you on that. I was there with them too. You can tell by just watching them play that they were a quality team.
Yeah, and Coach Collins, I think, frankly, is ridiculously underrated. Chris Collins, I think he is a top 12 to 15 coach in the country. I really do, because of how hard it can be.
Especially with the limitations at Northwestern. Like, it's not easy to build a team there.
Exactly. And you get guys to buy into that system, so much focus on kind of the guards, defense oriented, but that is why I do see Wisconsin finding success, because it is a game that I think you can get a great bounce back from Stephen Crowell, play through him. Obviously, Tyler Wall, not really a bounce back opportunity because he's been on a roll, but kind of use him in that Swiss Army knife role offensively and just do your absolute best to limit Boo Buie, even if that's like 17 to 18 on, 5 of 14 shooting. Like, that's probably going to get you the win. Not that Northwestern's crazy far away, but I do like the Badgers, probably fans traveling up there. And then if that happens, I don't see them falling lower than a 6, because that's beating a team in the field in the tournament time and before Saturday. I'd be feeling really good about that.
Yeah. And that's definitely a possibility. I look at it from this standpoint, and I also, if they get those 2 wins, I'm fine with them bowing out at that point. I don't like deep tournament runs unless you're a team that's a juggernaut that can afford to be a little tired in the first round, second round. I don't think Wisconsin's that team. I think we want to be coming in fresh, because I just think if we want to play our best defense, they're going to have to be locked in and high energy. And I don't know if you want to have a 3 or 4 game weekend for the Big Ten tournament where you end up being just wrung out by the time you get into the next week.
Well, and what also always hurts, the guys that do go that far in those teams, of course, the Big Ten tourney goes all the way into Sunday afternoon.
It's like the last one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Before the field gets announced?
Yep, which certainly doesn't help anybody. So, geez, if you get the opportunity to play Purdue and you can beat them, I think I would maybe push back a little bit, just because that's a jump a seed line type of win.
Yeah, if you find a way to win the Big Ten tournament, that would be a jump probably. I think that puts you at 23 and 14.
23 and 12, I believe.
Is it? Or what are we right now?
Because I think we're 19 and 12. Yeah, I'm pretty certain. Yeah, 19 and 12.
Okay. So if we're 19 and 12, so we're playing for 13 losses then if we lose one going into the tournament. Okay.
Yeah, well, so I think you even get to Saturday, right? Beat Purdue. I'm telling you right now, they will jump a seed line. That might be the number one.
If they do that, yes, seed. They probably will. Who's on the other side of the bracket?
Illinois.
Oh, yeah. I don't like that. Offensively, they're kind of us with better defense and better athletes on offense.
They're a juggernaut.
They are.
Oh, yeah.
They're a team going into March where I think the only thing that you would argue with them is that they don't really have a dominant force in the middle. And that's probably what they're missing, is they don't have that guy who you can probably rely on to get you 16 and 10 or something like that in the game when you need it, and to play really good defense against an opposing big.
Yeah.
Deja is not bad, but he's also not a guy that you expect to go out there and drop a huge game on somebody.
No, in that sense, you play Coleman Hawkins at the 5, right? In the kind of the small 5, and then see what happens. But man, I'm with you. Like, depending on the draw, that's a team I could see myself picking to go Elite Eight, Final Four, because I swear to you, I'd put their offense up there with, they're better than Purdue's offense. I'd put them up there with like the Kentuckys and, high ceiling Alabama, like teams like that they maybe don't defend, but they're scoring 88 a game, So I think I totally agree with you. But yeah, I'm with you. You need to take care of business Thursday. Should beat Northwestern. I believe Wisconsin would be favored in a game like that. And then anything else kind of on top of that, like you said, maybe cherry on top, right? Because then you get 21 wins, 21-13. That's probably around a 6, which is respectable. And then you're facing, an 11, and then there's potential there to still get to that second weekend. Plus, you're staying away a little bit from that 1 seed. So I like it, and fortunate that I will be traveling up there in just over a day to get some coverage.
Did you get the coverage?
Oh yeah,
you did.
Oh yeah, we'll be
Evan,
up there.
Stay home with the kid. I got this.
I think we might be up there together, crushing.
Oh, okay, nice.
Yeah, little little double coverage there, but no, I'm really excited. I actually have really enjoyed covering some sporting events up there this year, and why wouldn't I, right? Badger football win, Badger hoops win, so that's been really cool. And I just think, like, overall in a place like that, it's just going to be an exciting time. And you know me well enough outside of the show too. I mean, I love football, love football recruiting, but there's nothing quite like March Madness when you're in the thick of it.
Yeah, for sure. I think I feel pretty good about us heading in if the energy level stays up and if we play strong. I think Kamari coming back is going to help, will only help with things going forward. And yeah, I think we're in a good place. We've definitely bounced back a little bit from where we were in February to hopefully be headed in the right direction come tournament time. Now, are they capable of getting on a roll here? I'd love to see it right now. I think it would be really good for this team to get confidence back on the winning side of things. The effort level and everything's been better, but unfortunately there's also the toughest part of the schedule to finish the season. So now it's a matter of you guys are going to it's going to even out a little bit in terms of the level of opponent. You get an opportunity to kind of get some wins under it where you're probably the superior team against most of the teams you're playing, between now and the early tournament. And hopefully you can get on a roll and get confident and get hot. I mean, that's all it takes in getting into the NCAA tournament. You get a couple of games where you shoot really well, and suddenly you knock out somebody and actually can make the road easier for yourself to an extent. You can, if you get lucky and take out a 2 seed or something like that, where you're, effectively going against somebody higher than them the rest of the way. But yeah, I think Wisconsin's got an opportunity here. They could still be a dark horse with some of the things they can do. Even when we were talking Final Four for them earlier in the year, people were freaking out a little bit, and Rajeev and all of us were kind of like, okay, you guys need to understand this is situational. This is not like the Final Four teams that we had where it's like those were teams that are very well-rounded and capable of just flat out beating anybody. Wisconsin needs to be in the right situations here. There's going to be teams that are really bad matchups for them. Teams like a Providence or somebody like that type of team where they play really aggressive and want to run and gun, Wisconsin's going to have trouble with. And hopefully they can avoid that. Perfect matchup for them would be playing teams that love half court. They will be able to get on there and really grind on teams like that, because then it's just going to become a game of offensive efficiency.
And even push their pace a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. You have Story and you have a couple guys that aren't afraid to run, and you can hopefully that could be the difference in a game. You get 8 fast break points.
I would love to see a little bit, and this is not a knock on Crowell or anything. I've been very complimentary of him, and I think fans are taking things too far after a game against a guy like Zach Edey. But I do think a fun look at times is kind of Store at the 4, Wall at the 5. And you've got Chucky, Blackwell, and then either, Kamari or Klesmet, just kind of playing a little bit of that small ball, I think would be, pretty interesting. I think that's maybe something that we could see and showcase a little bit this week. But, before we move on to a little football recruiting, just a question for you, because I've been out of Badger country around tournament time the last few years, in the Big 12 and then out east. Are Wisconsin fans still traveling to this stuff like they were when I was a kid, or has it kind of tapered off a little bit?
It's been all over the place. I mean, we've had the tournament games jump. We were in what were we? New York for a couple of years with
Yeah, I
Rutgers
was
and
there
stuff,
for
and
one.
then
Yep.
Indianapolis for a while, and Chicago. And it's like, I personally am of the mindset, I'm like, I'd rather have it be a specific location and
Hmm.
make like establish a historical relevance to it being in this location. A place that has a city that's really set up well for it, that fans can get on board with, that's got hopefully some reasons to be there. Chicago would be a good one if they actually had a location that was there that's centralized and there's things to do there because it's Chicago. So people have a reason to want to travel there and enjoy the experience. New York probably is too. With that one, I always sit there and it's like, well, Rutgers is not New York.
Well, to me, man, you know what? I think Indianapolis was great. Like
Yeah,
I've
that
got
was
some
great.
good
I
friends.
actually agree with that one. And I think it's the right balance of having enough things to do there without being a city that's kind of like as hectic and frenetic as what Chicago is. So it's a little, and from what I've heard, it's set up really well.
Oh, it is. I can tell you that. Yeah, for sure. I was just curious, but I mean, I've made that drive, like I mentioned, like 4 or 5 times now since the fall, just up to Minneapolis. So I'm expecting some Badgers fans. I think that obviously the potential home court advantage type thing could be really intriguing. Of course, the Gophers will have some fans and what's been a little bit of a better year for them. But yeah, I'm really excited, man. And I'm going to tell you that I think if things break right, this team could still make a Sweet 16.
Yeah, I think that's probably about where I would say they have a shot at making it there. It will really come down to defense. Anything beyond that, they're going to have to play lights out on defense. Like you get to the
Yeah.
Sweet 16, you're going to play somebody that can score and can play defense, and you're going to have to match it. And it's really going to be, it's still going to be dependent upon type of matchup for me because I just don't think this team is built to really handle pressure well. We just don't have the guys that I'd like to see in it. Ball handling, I don't think we're terrible ball handling, but I just don't guys like having somebody really be in their grill. And I think that's something that's just a shortcoming with this team. And most teams don't handle it very well. But from an athleticism standpoint, I think we're athletic. I just think we struggle with teams that have long athletic defenders and getting them in our face.
Yeah. Yep. Or being able to defend on the other side. Yeah. Because obviously that can be really tough to cover. But overall, I think you said it really well. I think the team is trending in a better direction, but there's no more time to be trending anymore. It's basically
now you got to do it.
It's time to win or go home.
Now, if you don't do it, you're going home.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Let's dive into some football here. Like I brought this up to you as one of my things I wanted to talk about. I love recruiting. You love recruiting, and I wanted to take a look at what are 5 guys that we think are must-gets in this cycle for Wisconsin. And it can be guys we've already locked down. They can be guys that we're hoping they lock down in order for this to be a really good class for Wisconsin. And I kind of throw in there the caveat that the guys need to be attainable. Like we can look at the offer sheets that are out there, and yes, every team would have a great cycle if they have, the high 4-star guys that we throw out offers to that we're going to Ohio State, Alabama or Georgia. It's like, of course, we threw them an offer. Getting them would be amazing, but how realistic is it? So we kind of read the tea leaves on our end as fans, the ones that really follow it closely, and you guys definitely have a little more insight on it as to what we're looking at. But we'll dive into this here, and I'll let you lead off with your first guy here on where you want to go. We'll see how much overlap we have.
Awesome. Yeah. And kind of from our just very brief interaction before this, I don't think we're going to have too much, maybe one overlap. So I want to figure out where I want to start. I'm going to start with somebody that Wisconsin was able to get committed very recently. And that is a local standout, Torrin Petaway. Okay. Now, not only I go about this, basically football potential, of course, but also just high motor effort level and their potential fit as just Badgers. And I think that he's just going to be a great fit. Now, this was a guy whose recruitment just blew up earlier this winter. Truly, it blew up. Like I had not seen a lot of guys like that, you hadn't heard a ton about. I think he possesses versatility. He's got frame to add more muscle. I got to speak with him, on kind of the day he committed. He's got a terrific mindset. He's excited to be a Badger. And honestly, I think he's a guy that I could see working to, get other guys in the class, lift guys up, things like that. So he was somebody I would have said weeks back when you and I were kind of talking about doing a show. And now, check, already committed. He's one of my 5 for the Badgers.
Yeah, he's an interesting guy to me. And one of the things that I took away from this, and Ryan and I have talked back and forth on him a little bit, and with him being so new to it, I've really tried to get people to understand you can watch the film from this first year, but don't take this as gospel as that's who he is, because so much of it is just getting comfortable. And even if you watch the film, I tried to keep like almost palate cleansing myself watching it as it go on, and like try to pay attention to if he's making progress as the season goes on with his explosiveness. Are there things that you're seeing where he looks like he's starting to get more comfortable in his get off from the snap compared to where he was earlier in the year? And I actually think that was one of the takeaways that I saw watching him, is you get about halfway through the film and you start to notice that he's starting to be a little more explosive off the ball because he's getting a lot more comfortable coming out of his stance and being explosive. Yeah. And that's something that I think people kind of see the first 4 or 5 games that they show of him, and they're like, okay. And you start to kind of get numb to it. It's like, no, there's some difference here. Like he is getting more disruptive as the season goes on because he's getting more comfortable in what he's doing. And that's one thing I look at it with him, and I'm like, he's going to be one of those guys who's going to be lights out. We're going to see him how big things change over the course of his jump from his junior to his senior year.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think you also have to not only, use it as gospel, like you said, but remember, Torrin was a basketball focused kid for a lot of his life. Like he told me that the first time we chatted, even before the Wisconsin offer. So I think that's something that's really impressive. Like I said, super high motor. I mean, he has really, really high aspirations, and I'll go ahead this early. He's been awesome to speak with. And I will say, I think that as he continues to train and develop and obviously get into a system like Wisconsin has, I could see him being a potential multi-year starter, all Big Ten guy 2 to 3 years in Madison. I really could.
Okay. All right. Well, I have 2 guys that are already committed that I really want to see us hold on to, and I'll dive into my first one here. And the first one that I have is a guy we were talking a little bit about before we started on live here, and he's one of the guys that we're both a little concerned about, because he's got some big time offers that are come charging after him, especially an in-state one, and that's Cody Haddad. 6'1", 175 pound, he's probably 180 pound now, safety.
Yeah.
And this is a kid that ran a 10.7 100 meters. Like, he's got jets. Wisconsin, I can't remember a safety prospect that we've had that has that kind of speed in a while. I'm sure Jamerson was probably in that range roughly for a safety guy, because he could flat out fly. He was a 4.4 guy. But it's not common for us to have that kind of speed, and his instincts are off the charts. He's a guy who really comes downhill well. He's a guy who can really drop in coverage, and he actually has the makeup speed that even if he's a little off and guesses wrong, he can recover. And that's something we haven't had in a while. We really haven't had a true center field type safety in a bit at Wisconsin.
Yeah, not a ton to add, because he was one of my 5 guys as well. I've been doing this, my friend. I've been into sports media for, I'm aging myself a bit, for 8 or 9 years,
okay.
Including being a student reporter and doing this, type of position going on year 4. I was at Iowa State and now here. There aren't many kids, probably 10 to 12, whose tape that I saw, and I was just like, whoa, do we have him rated right? You know what I mean? Is this the right kid?
This last cycle, I was butting heads with, and Evan, to my credit, Evan was agreeing with me on a lot of them. There were guys I didn't love this last cycle for what Wisconsin was rated, and I'm like, this kid's gonna rate. This kid's going up. Like, you can see it on the footage. It's just, he pops.
And I think what first happens is the speed. You see that right away. I think he actually has some really nice ball skills. I
Yep.
think the reaction time is great, and that's not a surprise. Like, he's got an NFL pedigree in his family. I don't think he's done kind of a ton of recruiting interviews. I didn't speak with him a ton before he had committed, but just following him, really, really impressive kid, great film. And yeah, I mean, as of right now, obviously, still committed. And from my understanding, like very, good and locked in that sense, but obviously also still need to note that a school right after that offered was Ohio State, and they do seem to be pushing, a little bit from.
It's clear he's a
obviously,
priority for them. I think that they viewed what Wisconsin got and they were like, "Oh, this kid's here."
and
Well,
and
yeah.
a major difference is right in that state. So Wisconsin, they made him the top priority, and obviously got him committed quickly. And I think the staff deserves a ton of credit on that. And we of course go deeper, with the VIPs and stuff on the website, but it will be one to follow. I think that Wisconsin, I mean, they've been perfect with it and they've done everything perfectly. He's gotten many other big time offers, and nobody asked about him, but Ohio kid obviously getting that offer, and we'll see if anything more comes of it down the line.
Yeah, this is a staff, and not to beat on the previous staff. Fickell and his staff, they do not go down without a fight when it comes to holding on to kids. They have definitely raised the ceiling in terms of they are not a minor league system for the big teams. They will go head to head with somebody. I would say I would feel much more comfortable with this if Haddad was not an Ohio kid. That to me is where it gets really complicated, because you're fighting potentially this kid's, childhood team, which is always tough.
Well,
we've seen what it's done for Wisconsin in the past.
And to me, Justin, this isn't even an insult, to Ohio State. I mean, I don't kind of handle myself that way, but just with how well Wisconsin has done in recruiting at that position, how great the staff is, I'm not sure I'd even bat much of an eye if he wasn't an Ohio kid, because great program, but like Wisconsin has an amazing history and they're, trending back up as well. But like you mentioned, just kind of, that potential, like, just like it, maybe was for a Torrin Petaway dream school here in Wisconsin, that type of thing. But going down the line, another, I'm gonna cheat here and give two names just because it's the same position. This is my all-time favorite position, maybe in sports, certainly football, just because I played it, and that is tight end.
Okay.
And the two names I'll focus on here are Marshall Pritchett and Brock Schott. I'm comfortable, I like leaving a lot of details for VIPs, like I mentioned, but I'm comfortable, sharing. I expect something from Marshall Pritchett here in the spring, and he's said that in many interviews, so I'm cool saying that. And Wisconsin, again, I promise I'm not just trying to hype this thing up. Like, they have been incredible with this recruitment. I mean, the fact to even kind of be this deep already for a kid from, I believe, North Carolina, playing at a boarding school in Georgia. Like, obviously that's far from here in Wisconsin. And it's just going to be intriguing. I'm not sure you could find a more perfect fit for Phil Longo's offense. And then Brock Schott is just more of that kind of prototypical. You see these types of guys going to the NFL every year. We've got him rated as a top 10 guy. I think that's a great rating by our staff. I think that Pritchett could be going up as well. A lot of heavy hitters in these. I think I probably feel better about Wisconsin's chances as one of those heavy hitters for Pritchett, but still very, very much kind of in the thick of things, certainly for these two talents.
Yeah, Pritchett is actually one that I have on my list too. And I watched the film the other day because I wanted to compare him. I was harsh on Schott. I didn't actually put out a review of his eval, but I watched it initially a while back before his junior film had dropped. And I was like, all right, he's solid, but I didn't see the explosiveness wasn't there on the sophomore film the way it was in the junior film. And I watched that and I was like, okay, now I see it. Now he's really popping on film in terms of the athleticism. And that's what you see with Pritchett. Pritchett is flat out. You can see him as a flex tight end, being a guy who's a problem as an athlete. Really long, has the frame to put on good weight and probably carry a 250, 255. And and carry it well and be an explosive athlete still. And he's very fluid. I watch him run, and he looks like a wide receiver. I think they have him listed as like a flex
For
wide
Pritchett?
receiver / tight end. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, he does some of those things. Like he moves like a wide receiver in the way he runs on the field on his cuts. So he's a guy, I think both of them, and we were talking about this a little bit. They both look like NFL guys. Like if they get developed, they're going to be playing NFL football. But both of them are above average pass catchers in college for sure. And you'll take either one. I think there's a little bit more pass catcher upside, and I think you'd have to say that Brock Schott is probably more of the all around guy out of the two of them.
He's kind of your. I mean, this is putting high expectations, I know, but we're just making kind of comparisons. I think of Schott as more of kind of that Hawkinson build.
Yeah.
Whereas that he's got the frame, he can block, but still great, kind of with the ball in his hands. And yeah, Pritchett, I mean, to me, he is a wide receiver playing tight end, and that's an ultimate compliment. I've enjoyed kind of getting to know him a little bit throughout this process, and that'll be important. I love where your head's at too, my friend, because that's, I think 3 out of our 3 so far, a couple of the same. I don't think this will be the same though. This is a guy that not as many of kind of our fans talk about on the boards. I think there's been a little bit more recently. I know I did a recent update on him. Somebody that I think is very important, and somebody that if I made a pick right now would be to Wisconsin, and that is New Jersey wideout Cam Miller. We've got him as a 4-star guy.
I've heard him a little bit. I don't know if I've really dove into his film yet.
Yeah, you would, I think, be pretty happy with it. So he's a guy that is a standout starter, wideout corner for his team. Could be a power 4, power 5 guy at either position. It seems like the schools he's really focusing on now, like a Wisconsin, like a Kentucky, are really prefer him at wideout. I think that's a little bit more of a natural fit. And again, I think he's a guy that would just be a really nice fit, for this offense. And I think that as of, this moment, I don't think you kind of trade spots with anybody if you're Wisconsin. A lot of the recruiting department staff have done a great job. I just talked to Cam last week. He's really looking forward to visiting Madison.
All right. I'll go right into one of mine here, wide receiver. And I have Cameron Flowers.
I knew it.
From Michigan. And listen, there's been a lot of angst amongst Badger fans for us not being able to get a guy who could play on the outside. They want that big wide receiver who can run. Well, this guy's not a huge wide receiver, but he can run. This is a kid that is a 10.68 100. I'm pretty sure he's probably got a laser time 4.45 that's out there. And when you watch the film, you can see the speed. He gets around the corner and he just accelerates. And this is a guy that you can have a guy on the outside who's got size who can separate, and you have a guy that can just flat out, if a defender can't lock him up and get hands on him right, is just going to fly by you. Cameron Flowers is going to go past some people. If he gets his footwork down in college, he's going to be a massive deep threat.
Yeah, no, completely agree. I was back and forth between those two picks, honestly, because, trying to mix it up with positions. So, yeah, hard to, disagree with anything there. I've met him in person, in my travels for Badger 247, and, has to put on kind of some muscle and some build. But, yeah, I mean, those ball skills and specifically kind of what he can do after the catch, really impressive. And my last pick, I know you're as tuned in as anybody. I don't know if you've seen a lot of him. You got to be a diehard to kind of be up on this kid's recruitment. A great eval from the staff. Wasn't the first offer, but since Wisconsin offered, other Big Ten schools, Big 12 have all gotten involved. It's a kid about 2 hours, what would that be, south kind of from where I'm at, Chicago area. That is Morgan Park athlete Jamari Washington. Okay. Another kid whose film I'm like, wow, I think he should be rated a little higher. I think it's a great rating, but I'm saying I think he could be. He's going to end up being close to a 4-star.
I think he's going to be high 3-star, low 4-star type.
Yeah. Kid. Yep. I think, our guy Alan True, I think, did that rating, does an amazing job. I actually, just a little sneak peek, I actually just talked with him today. So I will have an interview on the website very soon. And just a guy that I think, you want obviously the prototypical technique, but then some size, some length at that corner position in this defense. Man, he's a guy that I think could be starting by year 2 potentially if he continues to develop. I think
that room's getting pretty deep. You better.
I know. No, I know. Trust me, it is in a good way. Maybe that's a bit of a stretch, but I think he's good. I think he's really good. And I think the fit there, my man, would just be perfect. And frankly, the Badgers should be in this one till the end.
Yeah. I think he's one of their top corner targets right now. There's a clip on him when I was watching. It was actually one of his wide receiver ones where they were throwing him. I think it was a slant route at the end zone. And I saw him elevate. And I was like, wow, that kid, he just hangs up in the air. I'm like, you don't see that type of athleticism in the way he can just kind of explode in the air with many kids in high school. And that tells me that he's probably got some massive explosion when he's playing on the outside at corner too. So I'm willing to bet he really drives on the ball. Nice pickup. I think he is a guy that they hopefully lock down, and I think he's another high-end find for them at corner. I think the staff really evaluates cornerback well. He's a guy that if they said they wanted to target him at wide receiver, I would still feel good about it because I think the athleticism is there.
Frankly, when I first got him on the phone right after the offer, after he was in town, I was kind of asking him about it a little bit because he can play either one at the Power 5 level.
I believe. Yep. All right. I'm going to jump into another. Are you all done with yours? You got everyone out? All right. Well, I got 2 then here to knock out. Next guy, Brandon Haynes. You and I have talked about him a lot. Both loved his film. Incredible athlete for the position. He fits the profile of what Wisconsin has typically had at that position that has gone on to the NFL and been highly productive at the NFL level. He's a super fluid athlete, really comfortable in space, accelerates really well. He's quick. I would not be shocked if he's a 4.6 guy. When I say that, I mean low 4.6. I think he's probably in that range. I think he's a guy who really drops in coverage well. That's the area that I think that he actually projects better than most of the Wisconsin guys. He looks really comfortable ranging back.
He does.
He's got really good instincts. He doesn't take a lot of false steps, and he is very aggressive when he comes downhill.
Reminded me of Haddad in terms of just the speed and damn, this rating.
He gets on people very quickly.
Yeah.
And I've been super high on him, and you were too, and we both look at that rating and we're like, that's going to change. Yeah. It's got to change because that ain't right. I've seen an 84 before at a linebacker. I know what an 84 linebacker looks like. It is not this dude.
Yeah. Where would you place him quick before you get to your last one?
If I was seriously going to say, I think that he could push as high as like a 92.
Wow. Okay.
I think he's probably somewhere between 88 and 92. But I personally think that if I was projecting him, I think I'm really high on him. I think he's a guy who's going to come in here. He's going to start 2 years. And I would not be shocked if he ends up being an all Big Ten type linebacker. Yeah,
wouldn't surprise me at all if he's a 90 by October.
Mm-hmm. And then the last one, I kind of cheated on this. We talked about this coming into it. Yeah. I went defensive line. I've really kind of honed in on this because I think it's an area of weakness on the current roster. It's getting better, but it's got a long ways to go. They need to get more bodies in there. I think it's an area that we've kind of under recruited in the past. I wish that room had more numbers because I think defensive line is always you want more bites at the apple. You want to have more opportunity to, if you miss, it doesn't kill you. And I think that's what's kind of hurt Wisconsin in the past. Because if your evals aren't on point and you miss on a guy and you only have 8 guys in the room, you're really thin. And especially when there's positions, you're only maybe carrying 2 guys. If you miss on one of them and you have dead weight, now you got 1 guy that you're going to basically have to run and, just grind down to a nub through the course of the season. Wisconsin typically hasn't wanted to use a ton of defensive linemen. I think they prefer to do it. I honestly think they would, if they want to play run defense with this team, I think they're going to be going to more 3-3-5. And I think they want to get some heavy bodies that can actually play and have some twitch to them. I have 3 guys that I targeted for this. And I'm really high on all these guys. I actually think from a motor standpoint, they project really well. And then also from the standpoint of, from a technique standpoint, the lowest rated guy, I love his film. And I know
who you're going to say there.
I have 3 guys. Cade, is it Peterzak?
Yep.
Gordy Selfstead, and Brad Fitzgibbon.
I knew you were going to say Brad.
I love Fitzgibbon's film. He's a guy that when you watch him one-on-one, absolutely understands what he's supposed to be doing to take advantage of the guy that's across from him. He's been really well coached from learning how to attack an offensive lineman. And you can see it because he's disruptive, but he's very much so a guy who just understands how to take it. Solfstead and Peterzak, both those guys, they have very high-end motors, and they are guys who have some good twitch and quickness and definitely have some length to them. As
Solfstead's got a nice basketball background too, a little bit.
Yeah, they both move really well for athletes. The Solfstead's got some tight end film that's with him when he's on the offensive side, and it's like this guy really moves well. Like if you get that at defensive end, that's a guy with his motor that's going to make plays simply because offensive linemen typically he's going to be lighter than them. And he's going to be more athletic, and they're both guys who probably 4'8". That 4'8", 40 range, that's a good 4'3" defensive end normally, and that's kind of what they're going to be doing, similar things in the 3-3-5. So they're kind of a fit for that. But
I know you well enough. You've been excited to get into that group. Honestly, hard to disagree with any of those. Fitzgibbon, I know was crazy high on.
He's such a high floor guy. I have a hard time believing he's not at least a really productive rotational guy.
Yeah, like pretty early too, potentially. And, some high ceilings within there as well. I think it's going to be a good class there. And I mean, as we sit here in, early mid-March, I think overall this class is looking really nice as well, my friend.
I think this is a group that's going to go up. I think people will sit there and look at them now. I think I took a look at them when we started racking up bodies, and I'm like, there are a lot of guys here they're going to be either 4-stars or fringe guys come final rankings. Like there's this staff has proven that they kind of understand from an athletic measurable standpoint that they know what they're looking for from an athlete, to get a rundown. The roster in general is really upgrading the athleticism, and that was something Wisconsin needed. That's something that we've in the past, I felt like we've kind of gotten a little heavy-handed with let's get the high floor guys that maybe don't have the ceiling. Luke Fickell likes to find guys that he thinks have some athletic measurables, and he'll take
high floors and high ceilings.
Yeah, exactly. But all right, man, it's been fun talking with you here. I know you got some things you have to take care of yet tonight. Once again, you want to check out Nick, you can check him out on Twitter. What's your Twitter handle, Nick?
At the real Nick Osen, and I promise, not thinking I'm a celebrity or anything. Actually, if you look up just my name, Nick Osen, there's somebody out there, Nico Sen, spelled the same. So I'm like, all right, I did it back in college, and it works. And man, this is our first time. We've been chatting for 4 or 5 months, just because I appreciate you on the boards. You obviously know your stuff, and this was a blast. So I'll put it out there right on the show anytime. At least once a month, man. You guys, you and Rajeev, you want me here? I'm here.
All right. We'll let you know, man. All right. Well, I'll let you get to your other stuff, man. And anytime you want to come back on, you let me know too, and we'll talk some more football. We got the spring coming up here. So maybe we'll get you back on once practices start and we can start talking about some stuff. Once again, if you guys want to check us out, we are the Bucky Report, and you can check us out on Twitter at Bucky Report. And I am Bucky Report JJ. So feel free to reach out if you want to ask any questions about the show or just talk some football or basketball with us. Till then, next time, guys. Later.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoy the show, subscribe to our YouTube channel at The Bucky Report or The Bucky Report Podcast from wherever you get your content. Until next time, on Wisconsin.